Okay. I want to say something that won't make sense to most of you, but it will make sense to at least one person. Clay Gilbert, you asked for this. You better listen to the whole thing. The rest of you, you didn't ask for this, but I'd appreciate you giving it a listen anyhow. So, we're a few weeks removed now from the final episode of the most current season of Doctor Who, and it was a mess. I could spend an hour or 2 or 3 or 10 talking about my feelings of why it was a mess and how it completely cocked up a lot about the current season. I'm not going to. I am going to reserve my comments unless I specifically need to cite issues as an example. I'm going to reserve my comments to what I think Doctor Who should do moving forward and why. So, the first thing that I would want to see Doctor Who start doing, what Doctor Who needs to change, right off the bat, get rid of season-long story arcs. I mean, maybe not like permanently, but stop doing season-long story arcs every season. And more importantly, stop doing multi-season long story arcs. Stop creating mysteries that you're going to throw at us in every episode, hitting us over the head with all the subtlety of a hammer when something pops up on screen, and suddenly you're trying to enjoy this episode, and oh my God, it's Mrs. Flood. What is Mrs. Flood doing? Wait a minute, back up. What is she wearing? What is she writing? What is she doing? Da da da. Stop derailing episodes for that kind of crap. Stop doing multi-season story arcs. Stop doing single-season story arcs for the most part. Definitely stop doing multi-season, but stop doing season-long story arcs for the most part. And one of the big reasons, not even dealing with storytelling, it actually does deal with storytelling because it gets into messing the storytelling up. The BBC and Bad Wolf and all the people involved with Doctor Who, the talent contracts, and I've never really paid close attention to talent contracts in the BBC, but it's quite obvious at this point that talent contracts are not written to where it's like, yes, you've been signed to this show for 5 years and you have to stay for 5 years. Because in modern Doctor Who, there has been a number of times where things have been derailed because various actors, from the companions to the doctors themselves, have said, I want to go. I'm done. I want to go. And oops, we're in the middle of a multi-story or multi-season story arc, and suddenly we have to wrap this up. We have companions who were key central figures to what's going on, and the actors decided they wanted to leave, and now we have to figure out a way to substitute something or someone else into those positions to make this stuff make sense. It's happened all throughout modern Who. Russell T Davies had little problems with it the first time. Stephen Moffat definitely had problems with it because the entire story arc that was being told across multiple seasons with the silence and the cracks, the cracks in the wall, the cracks in the universe, all that stuff. The resolution we got was not the resolution that he plotted out. It was the best he could do with what he had left, and in a rush, because he lost key central characters, because actors wanted to leave, and then because his friends had left, Matt Smith was kind of like, yeah, I'm not having fun anymore, I kind of want to go. And suddenly everything had to be wrapped up. It had to be wrapped up fast, and it had to be wrapped up in a bow. And there are entire things where when you go back and you watch from Matt Smith's first episode to his last episode, there are things from beginning to end in the giant multi-season story arc that by the time they are resolved do not make sense. The resolutions do not work, and there are things that were never really resolved because they couldn't be resolved, or they couldn't properly be resolved, so they were kind of treated as, let's just never speak of this again. And even to a degree, the things that were resolved are, let's never speak of this again. When you go, the whole silence thing, when you go and you look at all of the clues in Matt's first season and in Matt's second season and all the stuff they were building with the silence, by the time it ended and we've no longer got the right companions, we've no longer got Matt sticking around, so it's all being, rushed in to one of the worst Christmas episodes in modern Doctor Who. We get a resolution that just kind of was, and it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, this is awesome, this is great. It was just, okay, it kind of was. It's not an episode I want to go back and watch again anytime soon, as a standalone episode. And as far as like resolving all of these threads that had been being put out there, it didn't do a good job of finishing them. Now, is that completely the fault of the writer? Well, yes and no. In this case, the writer was the showrunner. And the showrunner came up with a multi-season storyline and didn't have guarantees that everything and everyone he needed would be there for the entire time. And when everything and everyone he needed said, hey, Steve, I'm out of here, we got a mess. We got a slightly better mess entertainment-wise than some of the other messes that have happened because of this, but we still got a kind of a mess. And that's kind of what happened with this most recent season. Apparently Ncuti Gatwa was not originally going to be leaving and regenerating when he did. There are various rumors as to why he decided to leave or why he was asked to leave. I'm not going to comment on the rumors. I don't know which ones are true. The only thing that we do know is he left. And the other thing we know is, yes, they shot entire other scenes and they had a completely different resolution for certain things because we were supposed to still have this Doctor for the third season, because Russell T Davies wrote out a story idea that was going to build across 3 seasons. And now we don't have the Doctor that was being built for. And we have an episode at the end of his second season and his final season that resolved storyline plots in a slapdash haphazard way and felt very poorly thought out and unsatisfying. Doctor Who cannot guarantee actors will be in Doctor Who for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years. Even in American television, let's be completely honest, you can't always guarantee that. Even when you sign somebody to a 4-year, 5-year contract, things happen. You can't always guarantee that. But more so, it seems, with the way BBC do their contracts, more so it seems Doctor Who, things happen. And in modern Who, things have happened a lot that have derailed the storyline progression of season-long and multi-season storylines. The best way to stop doing this is stop doing multi-season storylines altogether. Stop doing season-long storylines, except for special occasions. I think I would save big season-long storylines for things like the 5 and 10 year anniversary points. When you want to build something really, really big for an anniversary, have like these differing kind of let's do kind of a theme for this season, or let's have this bubbling under the surface to lead to the anniversary episode. I'd be perfectly happy with them being spread out and being special occasion things. But it's getting to the point where Doctor Who seems like every season we have to have a season-long story arc. Every season we have to have a season-long story arc that's part of a 2 or 3 or 4 season story arc. No, stop it. It keeps creating too many issues, or too many issues keep happening for the story to be told properly, and we keep getting bad story endings. And there's a problem when you have a bad story ending, the likes of which we got a few weeks ago. When you have diehards, like a lot of us are Doctor Who diehards, or we still wouldn't be here now. You have diehards. We're going to stick around. We love Doctor Who. We're going to stick around as long as we possibly can. Before it's finally like, that's it, I can't deal with it anymore, I'm out. A lot of the viewership for Doctor Who, a lot of the viewership that it needs to keep its streaming ratings up, to keep its live ratings up, are not diehards. They are what's called casual viewers. If you keep giving casual viewers subpar stories, or you keep giving casual viewers these big season-long 8, 9, 10 episode storylines with a building mystery, and isn't this important and that important, and you're kind of getting them invested in the mystery and you're getting them interested, and then you give them 1, 2 episode blow off that just absolutely sucks. They're not going to remember as much. Oh, well, yeah, there was like 3 or 4 really great standout episodes this season. It's like the last thing that they're going to remember is the last thing they saw. And even if they stick around for the next year, Doctor Who, Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who has now had 2 season-long story arcs that both had 2 less than great resolutions. And the current one being by far the worst of them, of many of the multi-season story arcs. Not just his. That's what casual viewers are going to remember. They're going to remember, we invested all of this time. We watched, 8, 9, 10, however many episodes any given season is. Because I'm not just talking about the current season. But we watched all of these episodes for a season. We watched all of these episodes for multiple seasons. And this was the ending. And that sucked. That wasn't worth it. It's kind of like, hey, kind of like a lot of the people that soured on Game of Thrones, right? We invested all of that time, and this is the final season that we get. I am so fed up with it. I'm so sick and tired. I'm so over Game of Thrones. You're going to have a lot of casual viewers who are getting fed up with this, and it's showing in the ratings. According to some of the news articles that were out today, it's not even a matter of that, and not gossip, not Facebook forums, not some guy on the internet. An actual credible news site citing actual credible factual information, saying that not only is like the Disney Plus thing seriously in doubt, if not outright dead, which outside of the money might be a good thing, because quite frankly Disney did a horrible job of promoting Doctor Who and getting it out there. Apparently, the ratings overseas, the first run ratings, and the rewatches, and the totals for the first run and the repeat streamings in like the 7 to 10 day window that they calculate these things in, were getting progressively lower this season, and they were actually lower than even Chibnall's seasons. And as much as a lot of people hate Russell T Davies all over again right now, because God knows everybody hated him when he left the first time, as much as people hate Russell T Davies right now, Doctor Who fans do at least, they still hate Chibnall more. So that kind of says a lot, that the ratings are even lower than some of Chibnall's seasons, if not all of Chibnall's seasons, on average. So, yeah. Those are your casual viewers. Those are your casual viewers kind of going, I'm done with this. I'm done with investing the time. I'm done with going through a season of what's going on. Oh, this is crap. Okay. You've given me a crap ending. Thank you. Because that's what they're, and that's, like I said before, that's what they're going to remember. If you watch a movie and it's got a fantastic opening and it's got a good middle section and it completely falls apart at the end, a lot of times you're telling your friends, yeah, I mean, started great, but oh my God, it wasn't worth watching. And maybe if it goes streaming, like maybe watch it if it becomes like a free stream. But I'm going to tell you, it's not worth spending the money on. It's not worth seeing it in the theater. It's not worth buying it, whatever. It's not worth renting it. No. It was, they completely screwed up the ending, and that just really ruined it for me. Okay, now you're asking casual viewers to watch 10 hours so that they can walk away feeling like, well, that's the second, third, fourth Doctor Who season in a row. People told me it's so great. I keep getting into this stuff, and man, when they end it, holy man, that's bad. Well, us diehards are sticking around, crossing our fingers, hoping it's going to get better. But there's even fewer diehards sticking around now. And those casual viewers aren't sticking around. And what's killing it, at least in my opinion right now, one of the things that's killing it is the season-long story arcs. And even more on the point, the multi-season story arcs. Just knock it off. Stop it. It's not necessary. I'm not saying things shouldn't have an impact in Doctor Who. If you do something big you have a 2-episode story and there's something big that happens, if you want, as the showrunner, to tell your writers, this is happening here, and this is what it is, and this is how we should see little signs of this having like a ripple effect or playing out, do that. Absolutely. I'm not saying go back to the days of when people joke about, science fiction and like Star Trek, the original series, where everything seems to reset at the first 5 minutes of an episode. No matter what it was that happened in the previous episode, no matter how big the threat, no matter what they should have learned, it's a new episode. Everything goes back to zero. We get to the end, and then the next episode, everything resets to zero. I'm not saying do that kind of storytelling again. That's not going to fly in modern storytelling. There should be repercussions and ramifications, and there should be ripples, and things should have kind of that narrative flow of, we're not forgetting what happened in the previous episodes, but we're not turning it into a giant multi-season arc. But yeah, that kind of stuff is just, it's not a successful formula for Doctor Who. Yes, we diehards love talking about it. And like one of my favorite podcasts is from the Earth Station 1 network. It's called Earth Station Who. And diehard Doctor Who geeks. And talking about the mystery and talking about the possibility. And when you hear them talking about it, or you're talking to friends about it, you can see that and hear that kind of like super fandom love, because you're talking like, okay, this is cool, but what is this? What is this? What is that? And you're having fun. You're invested. But when you get to the end of it, all of the stuff you were talking about, they've got to deliver. And if they don't, it just falls flat. And this season fell flat. And so did the previous season. And so have previous seasons. No more. Go back to just telling good single or double episode stories. Now, that leads to what else you have to do. What kind of good season or good single or double episode stories? Well, look back at Doctor Who's past. Doctor Who traveled throughout time and space. We would see the far future on distant worlds. We would see the past. We would see, a few stories here and there. Well, not a few, quite a few, particularly when the Doctor was stuck on Earth. But, we would see stories set in contemporary times. But, you're talking about a character who has a time machine that travels through space. He can go anywhere. The limits to the stories that you can tell, as far as where it is and what happens, is only limit. So they could tell any stories they want. And if you get a bunch of good writers, you can tell a bunch of absolutely awesome stories in a season that are basically standalone stories. But what is something that needs to be done for the standalone stories, and that will impact what kind of standalone stories that need to be told? I think they need to reset the Doctor, and I don't mean reset and like some people are saying, hey, take Doctor Who off the air for 5 years or something. I mean, they kind of need to reset the Doctor and how they're writing the Doctor. Because, especially in the modern era, it's gotten to the point where the Doctor is basically becoming a godlike figure. But confusingly and somewhat in a contradictory manner. The Doctor is a godlike being only when the Doctor needs to be a godlike being. And then the Doctor isn't when the Doctor doesn't need to be. And how do I give an example of this that makes sense? They keep raising the stakes. If you look at some classic Doctor Who, and even some very good early modern Doctor Who, the stakes were important. They were personal. They had you on the edge of the seat. But they were not the fate of the universe, the fate of time itself, the fate of all creation. The enemies were alien who'd taken up residence in a neighborhood. Some menace that found its way onto a space station or a spaceship. The Doctor arriving at a settlement in Earth's past or on another planet in a far future that has to be there 500 years from now, but something's going on, and if he doesn't figure out what's going on and stop it, the settlement's going to be wiped out, and that's going to alter the proper flow of time for the proper flow of the future, where this settlement won't be there when it's supposed to be. He's been there, he's visited, he had a nice lunch in a cafe there, right? So even though that still kind of touches on you're dealing with, time itself, it's not like the entirety of time and the universe is going to stop. And the story is told in such a contained way that you're still, the stakes are, no, this settlement has to be here in 500 years. I've seen it, and it's important because they do X, Y, and Z. So we have to figure out what's going on here to stop it, to make sure that this settlement is here in 500 years. And the story is contained. It's in that setting. So you don't have, like, it's smaller, it's more personal in scale and scope. In modern Who, more and more, the Doctor is becoming like a god. The Doctor is becoming all-powerful. We have seen in modern Doctor Who the stakes that the Doctor has had to face if he loses is the end of time itself, the end of the universe, the end of all existence. And in dealing with that, the Doctor has done things like reboot the universe. The Doctor himself, it was so significant to the universe that his TARDIS, out of all of the Time Lords and all of the TARDISes that are out there, his TARDIS was going to be the TARDIS that was going to explode the universe and destroy time and reality and creation. So that he then went in and tweaked everything and used his TARDIS to reboot the universe, and he rebuilt the universe from scratch in the new reality, and he even references it as that in the episode where Good Man Goes to War, where we discover who River Song is, when he's being asked about the baby. How could it be partly Time Lord? When were Rory and Amy together? And it's like, and then I did this and I did that and I rebooted the universe, and so there's a whole new reality. And the first time that Amy and Rory were technically together in the TARDIS in this reality was on their honeymoon night. But it's in this reality. He literally rebooted the universe. He created a brand new reality. The Doctor. That was the resolution to the story. It was cool. It was well written. But we get into these things where it's like the Daleks are destroying Gallifrey. The entire combined might of the Time Lords can't stop the Daleks, but the Doctor can. An entire Dalek fleet is invading a planet and nobody can stop them. But when we have an entire fleet of Daleks and an entire army of Cybermen covering all of Earth, the Doctor can defeat them in the last 5 minutes. We have a mad god, anti-life, destroying, wiping out reality, time collapsing on itself. The Doctor can reboot that. He can fix it. And one of the things they've built into modern Who is that line about, the Doctor, just the mention of his name can turn armies away, can make armies run. And we've seen that. They've literally shown that to us on the screen. You have an entire fleet of all sorts of different aliens, and they've got lasers and bombs that could destroy half of a planet. And the Doctor is down on the planet with no weapons at all, looking up at them and yelling, hey, come get me. Try it. Just remember, I've beaten you before. You know what happens when you try to beat me, so hey, don't try it. And suddenly all the spaceships run away. Or all the armies. You've got an army of bad guys. And the Doctor's got nowhere to run. And it's like, yeah, come on. You know what happens if you try to kill me. You know what happens. Oh, nope, see, now you all are afraid to try to kill me. Except in the same episode, or sometimes in the same contained story, if it's 1 or 2 episodes, you've got 2 or 3 of the bad guys chasing the Doctor through corridors, firing lasers at him, throwing bombs at him, and the Doctor running for his life, hiding behind things, trying not to get killed. So it's like, okay, 2 or 3 of them can figure out that they can shoot the Doctor and chase him away, but you're in a ship in orbit and you're not going to drop a nuke on a planet that would wipe out the entirety of half of the surface of that planet, or blast it with a laser that would wipe out a 10 square radius, whatever, 10 square mile section of the planet, because you're afraid that the doctor might have a mirror in his pocket or something. The internal logic starts going out the window, and it becomes a matter of the doctor has become godlike. But only godlike when the story requires him to be godlike. And that needs to kind of go away. They need to scale the doctor down a little bit. The doctor needs to start being a little more like the old doctor. He is a brilliant, formidable foe. He is not godlike. But on the other end of that, you also have to stop amping up the threats the doctor faces. Over and over and over in recent Who, in the stories, especially in the season-long story arcs or the multi-season stories, it's building up to a reality or existence threatening being. In this most current one, it was Omega. Omega, who is practically going to be able to eat existence, who is going to be able to undo everything, who would be essentially almost like anti-life himself. And you're building this up, and it's a reality-threatening being, and the doctor talks to him for 2 minutes, talking absolute rubbish just to distract him, and then reaches behind where he's standing, grabs basically a little zap gun, and defeats Omega inside of a minute. And unfortunately, that's become kind of a thing in Doctor Who more and more recently, and especially with some of the big season-long and multi-season story threats. RTD's doing it, Chibnall was doing it, Moffat was beginning to do it before he left, although he did kind of scale it down a little bit towards the end of Capaldi. But it's like you create a threat that is so massive, there's no logical, coherent storyline way that someone by themselves or with a handful of allies like the Doctor is going to be able to logically defeat. So you basically just snap your finger, hand wave away logic, come up with technobabble, and boop, we're done. The villain is defeated and reality is restored, all in the last 5 minutes. And you can kind of get away with the good guy wins and everything is good and we're all happy in the last 5 minutes on a smaller scale story. When you build up your threat and your villain to the point that they are galaxy, reality, time-destroying things, you can't just hand wave away, snap your finger, technobabble, boop, and he's defeated in 5 minutes. And when you keep doing that, there's no point in watching, because you've eliminated the concept of stakes. We know going in the Doctor's going to win. Going into almost any TV show or any movie, there's a 99% chance that the good guy's going to win. Or if they don't win, it's setting up the next story where they come back. It's like, the Empire strikes back and the good guys are in disarray. But that Return of the Jedi is coming and the good guys will end the overall story on top. That. It's going to happen. The Doctor's going to win. We all know that. We know that's going to be the case 20, 30 episodes from now. 10, 20 seasons from now. If Doctor Who goes away and it comes back in 15 years, the very first episode, the doctor's going to win. We know that. That's the nature of this type of storytelling. But you have to give us a convincing, coherent, intelligently and entertainingly written story, and you have to extend all of that to how the doctor wins. It can't be, ooh, this is a really cool mystery, and we've given you this really big villain, but we don't really have a good idea. Snap our fingers, hand wave, doctor wins. Maybe us hardcores will keep going, please let next season be better, and crossing our fingers and coming back. But less and less of us are, and a lot of the casual viewers aren't. Because when you take those stakes away and you make it pointless, the casual viewers see no reason to stick around. And you need the casual viewers for the ratings figures. Future storytelling, one of the other things that I think they kind of need to do. Somebody at the BBC needs to be in charge of Doctor Who. You need, how do I say this properly? You need someone at the BBC that the showrunner has to report to. You need someone or a group of someone's for whom they have like kind of the Doctor Who Bible. This is what Doctor Who is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to work. These are kind of the parameters. Now, I don't say that in like we're going to completely. I don't want to see them completely stifle like really cool new ideas and concepts. But if there's one thing that Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall have all proven, is that one of the things that will screw up Doctor Who faster than anything else is a showrunner coming in, not being aware of the failings of their own excesses, and wanting to do cool things without actually having a well thought out map of, well, here's how the cool thing impacts the Doctor Who history and its legacy, and this is how it alters certain things, and this is how it might Chris Chibnall, I'll use him as an example for a minute. Chris Chibnall is someone who, at least in a show like Doctor Who, something where you can get totally crazy, is not somebody who should be a showrunner in a show like that. He's someone that should be reporting to somebody else. Chris Chibnall is someone who, and I'm this is purely speculation on my part. I don't know the man, obviously. I can't say this is absolutely Chris Chibnall. But Chris Chibnall strikes me from a creative standpoint, having seen his work now. Chris Chibnall strikes me as someone who likes to come up with cool ideas and put them on the screen before he's really thought about what the cool idea is supposed to do. And certainly with Doctor Who, Chris Chibnall seems to be someone who wants to do things where he can go, I came up with a cool idea and I was the first to do it. Look, I got it on screen. And then doesn't think about the idea past that. The Chris Chibnall came on board, and one of the stipulations he had was when he came in, he wanted to have a new Doctor from day one, and it had to be a female. And I don't have like the same knee jerk against changing the Doctor as far as gender, as far as race, as far as whatever that some people have. But I also kind of have a thing of, if you're going to do something like that, have a good storyline reason for it, not just, I want to be the first to do it. And Chris Chibnall, as showrunner, with that, and then with Joe Martin's Doctor, because then he got to say, I had the first official black Doctor. He seemed to, his entire worldview seemed to be, I get to say I did these things first. And then I get to do cool ideas. Oh, what are we going to do for cool ideas? Well, I'm going to have the Master come in, and I'm going to have the Master wipe out the Time Lords, and then the Master is going to bring the Cybermen in, and we're going to have Cyber Lords, and it's going to be this really cool visual and this really cool concept, this new ultimate super powerful Cyberman concept. They're Cyber Time Lords. It's like, okay, that's actually really cool. That is a cool idea, Chris. What are we going to do with them? Well, I don't really actually have an idea. So the Master is going to introduce them at the end of this episode as the cliffhanger, so that people tune in the next episode where, because I really haven't thought up any ideas, just a concept, I'm going to have the Master wipe them out just like that, and we're never going to talk about them again. And that was a lot of Chris Chibnall's run, and the problems with Chris Chibnall's run in a nutshell. Chris Chibnall had clever ideas. He had, I won't even say clever ideas. Chris Chibnall had clever concepts. But he didn't actually have fully formed ideas, and he definitely did not have fully formed stories. And what we kept getting was just scattershot stuff, so that Chris Chibnall could smile and look at everybody and go, hey, aren't I clever? Look at me, I'm clever. See this? This is brilliant, isn't it? This is clever. This is a cool idea. Okay, but it's not a good story, Chris. A cool idea does not equate to a good story. And as much as we all had kind of gotten burned out on the excesses of Russell T Davies, a lot of people were kind of like so burned out from Chibnall that when Russell T Davies came back, it was like the savior is coming. And I was one of the people going, no, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic because I remember how much we hated him for his excesses back when. And what we got was more of the same. Chibnall's excesses were, I got a cool idea, I don't have a story, but I'm going to stick the cool idea in here and just hope everybody loves it for the cool idea. Russell T Davies was, I'm going to tell like these giant stories and not have a good ending. I'm going to do crazy stuff with the Doctor. I'm going to do crazy stuff with the characters. You know, Russell T Davies is responsible for what I consider one of the most horrendously horrible versions of the Master, and nothing against the actor who had to put up with Russell T Davies's direction and concepts. But, you know, the Master basically turning into an MCU villain, complete with crazy superpowers, is probably something that shouldn't have happened. And if you had somebody that Russell had to go report to and say, okay, I'm going to do this with the Master. No. Give me, or Chibnall had to go to, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to, okay, no. Tell me why. Give me a good solid story reason. Give me a logical reason. Argue this with me. Convince me this is a good idea. I don't want to see like a committee that's going to completely strangle good creative vision. But at the same time, you can't hand Doctor Who off to somebody and not tell them there are limits. You can't hand Doctor Who off to somebody and go, yeah, go nuts, do whatever you want, turn it inside out, and not expect a mess. And that's kind of what we're getting, and that's certainly what we've gotten with the last two showrunners, more so than what we were already hitting into. There needs to be a set idea. This is what the Doctor is, and that's not a bad thing. That's a little bit like saying, okay, this is what Captain America is, and you set those parameters. And if somebody comes along and says, hey, yeah, Captain America is, he's going to start, he's going to start doing these like horrendous, horrible things. Why is he going to start doing these horrendous, horrible things? Because I think they're cool. No, you can't do that. Oh, I'm going to do this, that, and the other to the Doctor. Why? Oh, I think it's cool. No. Give me a solid story reason. Give me a reason why we're doing this, what we're going to do with it moving forward. Give me a reason why I should let you do this thing because it's cool. That upends history and legacy in Doctor Who. Being the showrunner, being the head writer of Doctor Who should not be about making a name for yourself as the person that came up with these wild ideas, or who did this the first time, or who got to do various crazy ideas. It should be about giving us the best Doctor Who that we can. And if the best Doctor Who that we can is that we can get is a man or a woman, or is going to be part of some story that changes an aspect of Doctor Who's past, I'm all for that. But somebody at the BBC needs to be the person who is sitting down and going, explain this to me. I'm a fan of Doctor Who. I understand the excitement. Explain this to me. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me why you're doing it. Tell me how you're doing it. Tell me how this is going to play out. Explain how you have thought this out. And I kind of say this coming from multiple fandoms. I think I was on Earth Station Who when I said I was on Earth Station Who, or I was on a convention panel. I hope I was on Earth Station Who, because then there's possibility of finding it. But I started telling people a while ago with Chris Chibnall. To me, Chris Chibnall was the Vince Russo of Doctor Who. And if you're not a wrestling fan, you're not going to understand that. But Vince Russo was a writer for professional wrestling, for WWF. Yes, professional wrestling has actual writers. They don't just, for those of you that aren't wrestling fans, they come up with storylines, they come up with ideas and characters, and hey, we want you to do this and that and the other. It's not just two guys walk out and go, I hate you, let's fight. Although that does occasionally work as a story. But Vince Russo was a writer. And Vince McMahon, who ran WWF at the time, liked Vince Russo's ideas. Vince Russo was kind of like Chibnall. Vince Russo was an idea factory. He would come up, idea. Okay. But he was part of a writing team, and Vince McMahon was over top of him. Vince McMahon was a controlling factor. And the writing team was also the head of, particularly the head of creative, was also a controlling factor. And Vince McMahon was basically the head of creative. But it's like, that's an idea. What are you going to do with it? No, you want to do this so that you can see this happen. Where are you going to go with it? Where does that go from there? Vince Russo convinced WCW that he was the brains, he was the brilliance, he was the Attitude Era, which is the biggest pro wrestling era, popularity, money, and blah, blah, blah that they had made to that point. That's the end of the 90s. That's Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker and DX and all of that stuff that's happening. At The Rock, the rise of The Rock, and all, that's like the end of the 90s. It's called the Attitude Era. And the craziness and the popularity. And Vince Russo was like, yeah, I'm the storyteller, I'm the brilliance. And he went to WCW, and yes, he had a million ideas, but he didn't have anybody over top of him saying, this doesn't make sense, what are you going to do with it? Okay, you're going to do this big thing that you think is cool, and you're going to have this moment on television, but where are we going from there? What's the follow through? You need that. It's not just moments. You can't have moments. Moments aren't storytelling. And as a result, Vince Russo crapped the bed in WCW and helped contribute to the ultimate demise of WCW. Matter of fact, he crapped the bed so bad, there were literally people who thought he never stopped working for Vince McMahon, and he went to WCW explicitly to destroy the competition. Chris Chibnall was Vince Russo. Idea, but not follow-through story. Russell T. Davis isn't quite that bad, but he's almost doing as bad of a job as that. And the reason that he's able to is kind of like Vince Russo when he got away from Vince McMahon and suddenly he was the guy in charge. He was running the show. He had full creative control. There was no one there to tell him, okay, Vince, that's a cool idea, but that's a moment. What are we doing with the moment? This is cool, you know. Okay, you want to do all of these things to tease the audience, but how are you going to wrap it up? How are you building to a finale, and what are you going to do for your finale, and how is the finale going to be satisfying, and how is the finale going to set everyone up for the next story we have to tell? I think Doctor Who might need that. Doctor Who is going to have to be eventually go back, it's got to leave Bad Wolf, it's got to go back to BBC. Doctor Who is going to have to go back under that umbrella, and it's going to have to go back to the BBC's control. And when they hire a showrunner, the showrunner is the head of creative, but they still need to justify some of what they're doing. Because letting them just run wild is not working. And I realize as far as fixing Doctor Who, that's a little outside of just the storytelling on the screen, but that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, Doctor Who is not Stephen Moffat's personal creation. It's not Chris Chibnall's personal creation. It's not Russell T. Davis's personal creation. They should be able to do everything they can to tell fantastic stories in the Doctor Who universe. They should not be given free rein to just do willy-nilly whatever the hell they want to do in any way they want to do it. There does have to be limitations. And I hate to say it like that, because I know it's just as easy to abuse that system accidentally, and suddenly you have really good creators getting frustrated because they've got like really good, legitimately good creative ideas and stories, and they're running into issues getting it through But I think if my options are years of really, really good, solid Doctor Who ahead of me, versus less years, and occasionally somebody comes along and does like this really wild story that blows everybody away or changes the way we look at Doctor Who, and then we go back to Chris Chibnall or current Russell T Davies era style Doctor Who. No, I'd rather have more years of really good, really solid, really entertaining Doctor Who, where occasionally, yes, a really super idea is going to have to be fought harder for, but it's still there. And it's not, we're getting this like really fantastic idea after we have gone through the excesses of the showrunner, kind of making us go, oh God, please stop doing this to us. Stop doing this to Doctor Who. So, I mean, those are probably my biggest points. Those are the big points for me. Stop doing multi-season stories, especially when you have no guarantee that you can get to the end of them with everybody that you need to be there. Limit season-long story arcs to special events. I don't need season-long story arcs every season from Doctor Who. I'll be more than happy with fantastic standalone episodes or two-parters. Start telling more stories where the Doctor is dealing with threats that are massively big for the setting that they're in. But the scale and scope is not, this is a reality-altering story where the Doctor is going to face the annihilation of existence and have to pull off godlike things. Stop putting the Doctor in situations where the Doctor by himself can defeat thousands of ships worth of Daleks, when thousands of shipworks or even just hundreds of ships worth of Daleks were enough to start destroying the combined might of the Time Lords of Gallifrey. The Doctor doesn't have to be Superman facing, these type of things. Keep it simple, stupid, right? KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, or even keep it smaller, stupid. A little both. A little simple, a little smaller scale and scope, but good storytelling. Doctor Who did that for decades. The Doctor doesn't need to be a god. The Doctor doesn't need to be a Marvel superhero. The Doctor just needs to be the Doctor. And kind of figure out a Doctor Who Bible. I mean, you can't say like a Doctor Who Bible in the same way as like certain shows, because the history of Doctor Who has got a lot of contradictions at this point. So maybe not a Doctor Who Bible, but the BBC needs to figure out some Doctor Who guidelines. If you want to go outside those guidelines, if you want to do something crazy, you got to sit down and explain it to whoever's in charge of making sure Doctor Who stays true to itself, and it knock their socks off with the story you plan to tell and the stories that you're going to spin out of that. If you're going to fundamentally alter something about Doctor Who, if you're going to pull something out like the Timeless Child, you'd better damn well be able to explain what it is you're doing, how you're doing it, what you're doing when you're moving forward, how it is going to improve Doctor Who as a viewing experience for the people at home. And if you can't, I'm sorry, you don't do the Timeless Child. You don't fundamentally change who and what the Doctor is just so you can say, I did something cool that nobody else did. And yeah, I'm picking on Chibnall a lot because I thought Chibnall was horrendous. And I think a lot of the things that Chibnall did were absolutely horrendous. Although I should say, because some people will jump on that, no, Jodie was not one of the things that was horrendous. I thought Jodie was a fantastic Doctor. I wrote something up on my own blog about her first episode where I said point blank, I thought she showed all the potential in the world. She was a fantastic Doctor waiting to be discovered. My biggest problem with Chibnall are the things that I outlined here, and on top of that, he was a lousy showrunner as far as getting good quality stories for her. Or for that matter, treating her, and actually, let's add that in, because it's a lesson from the Chibnall era. And if they do another female Doctor, because I don't think Billie Piper is actually the Doctor, I think that's something weird going on. Although, let's throw that in first. How about this? No more stunt casting. I realize everybody was thrilled. We had RTD back and we had David Tennant. No more stunt casting. We're not doing this again. It was cool. It was funny. No more stunt casting. We're not doing gimmicks like that anymore. I would like to see that done away with in the future. It was cool to see David come back, sort of, kind of. I don't know what they're going to do with Billy. They could have a great idea, and it could change my mind. I doubt it will. No more stunt casting. No more gimmicks. Stunt casting and gimmicks do not save a television show from cancellation. They just hasten its demise. So, one thing I would like to see them do when I said, okay, let's specifically look at Chibnall. They may have they may have a female Doctor again in the future. Chibnall was a horrendous for the guy that came in and said, I want a female Doctor. That's one of the conditions of my taking the job. Day one, new Doctor, got to be a female. Chibnall was horrendous at being a showrunner of a female Doctor Who era, because the Doctor stopped fundamentally being the Doctor in a very important way. The Doctor has always been the smartest person in the room. The Doctor has always been the driving force in the story in some way. And during the Chibnall era, the Doctor very frequently became the second most important person driving the story, it felt like. Was not always the smartest person in the room. They started, so I think, consciously or unconsciously, obviously unconsciously in this case, but consciously or unconsciously, there is a problem still to this day, even with very progressive writers, when they start writing a female character who has power and authority. It's like they're either the Ice Queen or they're not. You get characters that have power and authority and they're not the main character, and they become popular, and you move them into the group. And you see this even in TV shows that are happening now. This character's gotten really popular, but it's not a main character. We're going to give them a better contract, we're going to bring them in, we're going to make them a regular part of it, and then they start to soften the character. They're not as commanding. They don't wield power the same way. They don't quite act the same way. They blend in with the others. They start kind of neutralizing, equalizing, in a way that they don't do to male characters. And there were a lot of times in Chibnall's era where the Doctor, it felt like they were doing that with the Doctor. The Doctor stopped being the full command authority all the time. The Doctor stopped being the smartest person in the room. Even when she didn't, it felt that way. And certainly, they put Graham in there, and you had like the older male companion who sometimes felt like they were starting to write more like the Doctor. This is something the Doctor should be doing, not Graham, but we're going to have Graham do it. And that's a very subjective criticism. I realize that. Other people may not have seen it that way, but if you have another Doctor that's female, you kind of need somebody who's just looking at the Doctor as the Doctor over top of the showrunner, and who's like telling the showrunner, because the showrunner is also writing, hey, come here. This episode, and this episode, three in a row running, it almost felt like you were deprioritizing the Doctor a bit. It almost felt like you were having this character kind of do some things in a way that the Doctor should have been doing, or in a more doctory way. Can you give us back the Doctor? Bring the Doctor back up a little bit. Rewrite your next few scripts. Do whatever. But I realize you've already got some shows in the can, but this needs to be addressed, because apparently it wasn't with Chibnall. And unfortunately, a lot of the bad writing and a lot of the poor writing with regards to how the Doctor was treated under Chibnall, I think it very negatively affected the perception of Jodie's Doctor. I think she was a fantastic Doctor. Unfortunately, she got screwed over in the same way that Colin Baker got screwed over. Poorly executed ideas and bad scripts. And and certainly in Doctor Who fandom, if you're not familiar with Big Finish, there are people out there that are Doctor Who fans. They've never listened to any of the Big Finish shows. They only know Colin Baker's Doctor from the TV show, and they're like, man, that was a horrible Doctor. He was so bad as a Doctor. No, Colin Baker was a great Doctor. He just had horrible writing. And ever since Big Finish got the license to do original Doctor Who audios with classic Doctors, and they had Colin Baker stories, Colin Baker is given a good Doctor Who story. Colin Baker is a fantastic Doctor. I love the hell out of some of my Big Finish Colin Baker stories, and I hated Colin Baker's run on TV. If you give a good actor good stories, you can have a good Doctor. Chibnall didn't give that to Jodie. Is that completely Chibnall's fault? Yes. But is it also the fault of the BBC? Yes. Because that, I guess, unconscious weakening of the Doctor that seemed to be happening was bugging me a little bit as early as the first season that she was in. And somebody should have stepped in and said, hey, tighten this up. And it apparently never happened. The Doctor is your main character. It doesn't matter who is playing the Doctor. You write the Doctor. And you write the Doctor as the Doctor. That does not mean that there can be personal traits that are different, depending on whether the Doctor is white or black or Hispanic or Indian or Asian or male or female or straight or gay or whatever. The Doctor, to some degree, the Doctor is a little bit like a certain profession. If you are in the military, if you're a first responder, if you're police, if you're a whatever you are, and you're dealing with emergency situations or you're dealing with the public, when you're in uniform and you are having to be the source of authority in public, there are certain ways you have to act. You have to be perceived and you have to act. The Doctor is a little bit like that kind of job. The Doctor based on the quirks of the actor as they begin to make the Doctor more their own. In quiet moments on the TARDIS with the companions can have very distinct and noticeable differences from Doctor to Doctor. And that's a good thing. It kind of makes it fun. You get those distinct differences. This Doctor is a little more thoughtful. This Doctor is a little more joyful. This Doctor is a little more brooding. This Doctor is a little more jokey. This one's a little more like, hey, you're a part of we're all family. This one's a little more like, we're in this, but, we're doing this professionally. However, you get these different personalities. But when it's go time, when it's game day, and the big bad is there, and you're dealing with a situation, the Doctor has to be the Doctor. And the Doctor has to be the Doctor full force and in your face. Because that's the way the Doctor is. I know some very feminine women who are police. One of them is like former 8 years U.S. Marines. When you put them into uniform and they're right here, something is happening, they're on the job, they are a force that you do not want to mess with. It's like, you need to go over there, you need to step back, you need to whatever, blah, 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 whatever. It is night and day. That's their professional capacity. You're hanging out with them, they're not at work, night and day. Doctor's kind of the same way. When it's go time, the Doctor has to be the Doctor. You can write the Doctor differently based on the actor, the performer that you have in the role, in their quiet moments. But when it's go time, the Doctor has to be the Doctor. And when you start screwing that up, someone needs to be above the showrunner to come here. You're screwing up the Doctor, and here's how. And I think that's, like I said, that's not 100% talking about the storytelling, even though it is. But I think that's something that, they might even have to go that far when they get Doctor Who back from Bad Wolf Productions. BBC may want to sit down and go, this is our golden goose, guys and gals. This is the Doctor. This is our golden goose. We need to figure out kind of a story guideline or kind of a Doctor Who guideline. And it's not wholly script. It's not, nobody can ever do anything outside of these lines. But if somebody wants to go outside these lines, they gotta work for it. They gotta prove it. They gotta pitch it in a way that makes everybody go, yep, okay, we're gonna let you have this one. And if they can't, well, then they just need to focus on telling really good, really fantastic Doctor Who stories. The kind of Doctor Who stories that have been getting told for decades now. But yeah, I think that one is kind of important. And I've gone a little long now. I definitely did not plan to go over an hour, and I'm now 10 minutes over an hour. So, but yeah, that's those are my big points. Those are where I'd kind of fix things in. That's how I would want to fix Doctor Who. That's what I would want to see happen with Doctor Who in the future. And those are all, for me, vitally important storytelling-based things. I don't care who they cast as the Doctor. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what their skin color is, what their ethnicity is, what their gender is, what their sexuality is. Don't care. The Doctor is the Doctor. No, Doctor Who's problem is not that it's woke. It's always been woke. You're just a moron shut up. The fundamental problem with Doctor Who is the writing has been poor and the concepts for the writing have been ill-conceived. I want them to tighten that up a little bit. And I think these are the ways to tighten it up. So that's my fix for the Doctor. If you're still listening, thanks for listening.